The history of DreamWorks Animation is very, very interesting. It wouldn't be possible if Jeffrey Katzenberg hadn't been fired from Disney during the time that he was promoting The Lion King. That was basically where the trouble really began with him and and the end of his tenure at Disney. And so he takes this over to DreamWorks Animation with Steven Spielberg and David Geffen, and they create a studio that really was competing with Disney right from the get-go. I mean, they were making a lot of really good movies right from the get-go, with Ants, The Prince of Egypt, Chicken Run. Shrek, of course, was the big one that really put them over the map. The Shrek sequels, of course, and then it suddenly became an event, especially when you consider that CG animation was slowly but surely becoming the norm in the mid-2000s. You know, Madagascar was a big success for them. Wallace and Gromit won an Oscar. Over the Hedge was a big hit. Shrek the Third, not as successful as the other Shrek movies, but still made money. In fact, B-Movie made a lot of money. Kung Fu Panda, Monsters vs. Aliens, How to Train Your Dragon. In a matter of only about 15 years, DreamWorks was kind of beating Disney at their own game, before eventually Disney kind of began slowly coming back in the late 2000s. And, it's very interesting that these two studios have been so connected to each other ever since DreamWorks launched its animation division. But ever since then, they've made a lot of really good movies. I mean, there's been a lot of good films. Some films that are not as great as others. I mean, there are some films that are just kind of like, they're okay at best. Like Flushed Away is an example. Shark Tale was probably one of their worst movies in general, but that movie has a lasting impact with me personally because that was the one where I broke my pinky finger on. If you want to hear that story, click the link on the corner there and see the video I did way back in August talking about that. But that's not one of their better movies. There was a stretch in the mid 2010s where they had a couple of movies that were like, yeah, as much as DreamWorks can make an idea, as stupid as it is, work as it does, stuff like Turbo didn't work out well. I really didn't like Home, The Boss Baby, the Trolls movies. I mean, they've never had that lull like Disney had whenever they had those lulls in their animation eras, like before there was that gap between movies like The Jungle Book, when Disney passed away, Walt Disney, and then when they resurfaced with Oliver and Company, The Little Mermaid, starting that second renaissance. DreamWorks has never had that, quite honestly, but there have been more misses than hits in the last couple of years. I mean, 2019, I think, was a perfect example of where the downfall kind of started, because you had two really good movies come out that year. How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World, and then Abominable. And then after that, there was a little bit of a lull between 2020 and 2022, where there were some movies that they had that were just weren't that great overall. I mean, Trolls World Tour kind of continues the disappointing factors that would continue to be shown in the Trolls movies in general. The Croods: A New Age, as much as I love the original Croods movie, I thought the second film was just okay at best. It wasn't terrible per se. And then 2021 comes around, and there's their two overall just worst films they've had in almost 20 years. Spirit Untamed, which is nothing but a watered-down version of the original, watered-down reboot of Spirit, Stallion, and the Cimarron. And then the Boss Baby Family Business sequel nobody was asking for. And so you figure that, okay, this is kind of their low point here. This is kind of where DreamWorks' good luck starts to go away. But then in 2022, the tide slowly but surely began to turn. And I'm kind of thinking right now, is DreamWorks right now in that having their kind of second renaissance, like kind of how Disney had their renaissance back in the 80s. I mean, it's not that much of a threat to their studio like it was back in the 80s, when they were just making films that were either underperforming or just were not great altogether. And, there were only a couple of films in between the successes of stuff like The Rescuers, and then we get to stuff like the Oliver and Company and Little Mermaid, like I said, that kind of started the renaissance, with films that DreamWorks has kind of had a couple of those movies between 2020 and 2021 that were really worrying. Like, was this a sign that, DreamWorks is kind of losing their muster here? But then 2022 comes around, and they started putting out some more movies again, with The Bad Guys being the first of the two movies. A film that really has been done to death time and time again. We've seen it done in Megamind. We've seen it in Wreck-It Ralph. The bad guy wants to become the good guy, and it's a premise that's been done before, but you can always bring a new hook to a story, a new twist. You can make it work that way, and you got something special. And The Bad Guys was truly something special. I think it was one of those movies where I had more fun with a DreamWorks animated film at that point since Captain Underpants, which is a criminally underrated movie that DreamWorks, for some stupid reason, decided we could put this out on the weekend where it could make a ton of money, but no, we're going to let it die underneath Wonder Woman. I mean, it's not fair that The Boss Baby got the prime box office release date on March 31st when there was literally nothing opening up, and yet Captain Underpants was forced to sit behind Wonder Woman at the box office. They were trying to bury that movie for reasons that are beyond me, but that's beside the point here. The Bad Guys, what's great about that movie is that the animation is just so chaotic and over the top, and I just love the way that the movie rapidly changes around the style and the visual aspect to it. I mean, chaotically, it's all over this movie, and it's just amazing to see. It has a great voice cast. The comedy is well done. A voice cast that includes such names as Sam Rockwell, Mark Maron, Awkwafina, Craig Robinson, Anthony Ramos, Richard Ayoade, Zazie Beetz, Alex Borstein, Lily Singh, all of them playing their parts really well. The comedy is very funny. It's very smart, very silly. It's just a hilarious movie, and it's definitely one of the best DreamWorks animated movies they've made in a long, long time. A movie that was just like, where did that come from? And speaking of movies where you're wondering, where the hell did that come from? Puss in Boots: The Last Wish was probably the definitive example of a film that comes out of nowhere. Is, for lack of a better word, a sequel that probably no one really was expecting to see, especially considering that it had been almost 11 years since the last movie. The last movie was just okay for what it was. I mean, it wasn't anything too spectacular or too amazing, but it was fine for what it was. But Puss in Boots: The Last Wish not only was a film that surprised everybody, but it really took a lot of chances that I don't think anybody really saw coming at all. It was a movie where you had Puss in Boots, who had, he's been living his life on the dangerous side. Like, he always believed that nothing would ever get him, but then he realizes that he's only got one life left to live, and he's also being followed by this really intense villain who is basically known as Death, played by Wagner Moreau, who is really damn good in the movie. That's one of those guys that's just that's a contender for possibly one of the best villains in an animated movie in a long, long time. And so Puss in Boots has to team up with Kitty once again, and also this dog that he teams up with. They race against all these other different fairy tale characters seeking the same treasure, and it's a movie that could have easily been just another generic sequel, but the people that came on board of that movie, they really took a lot of influence from the new wave of animation, of how we were making CG animated movies nowadays, with stuff like the biggest influence being Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. But it's using something that's very different, giving the film a more paint-like style to resemble more of a fairy tale story, like something you would read out of a children's book. Like, they went all above and beyond to make this more epic and more grand than it had any right to be. They could have just made a generic sequel, and they probably would have made money because it's the Shrek films in general, but no, they really took chances with it, and it works incredibly well. It's a film that is one of the most spectacular achievements I've seen from the studio, and that was really the point where I started to wonder, are we really starting to see DreamWorks coming into their own again, making more movies that really are going to define what the future for that studio holds for them? And it's amazing to see what they're doing. It really got me excited for everything that was going to be coming after that, because I really thought that this is going to be the start of something grand, something exciting. And then Ruby Gillman Teenage Crackhead comes out in the summer of 2023, and yeah, we've talked about that too on this channel. If you want to go check out my review, I have a link to it in the corner. But the movie actually was pretty good. I mean, it was a movie that I thought was not going to get I thought I wasn't really getting a lot of investment into it, but it's surprisingly really, really solid. You have a Kraken girl named Ruby Gillman who is desperate to fit in at this high school. When she breaks her mother's rule by going into the ocean with her any would-be friends, she discovers that she is a direct descendant of battle-hardened Krakens who are protecting the sea from evil mermaids, and is also destined to inherit the throne from her grandmother, played by Jane Fonda, where you have Annie Murphy playing the mermaid who's basically her frenemy in this. And I mean, this is a fun movie, man. Like, the animation is really solid. The comedy overall is okay. It does have kind of a generic story that's kind of spoiled within the trailer itself, but the movie itself was actually a lot better than I think a lot of people gave it credit for, and people probably would have gone to see it if, kind of like with Captain Underpants, DreamWorks didn't have to put this out behind another blockbuster film, a film that was supposed to be a big blockbuster, which was Indiana Jones, but it also didn't help that Ruby Gillman didn't get any publicity whatsoever. You couldn't see any previews anywhere on TV. The only previews you could see were the trailers on the big screen, and that was it. I did not see a single commercial on TV, on any of the kids' channels, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, or any of these other channels that would have easily had a trailer for this on there. Like, it's like DreamWorks was trying to bury their own film, and like, they wonder why didn't it do so well? Well, first of all, you didn't promote it. And when you promoted it, the movie didn't look that good to begin with. I mean, the trailers overall looked like they had promise to it, but most of them were kind of underwhelming, and because of that, I think a lot of people were kind of turned away by the movie, which is a shame because there is a lot about the movie that actually does work, and it actually is a pretty enjoyable film that I would still recommend people check out. And then Trolls Band Together comes out, which, was kind of their one misstep in the last since the beginning of 2022, which just kind of goes to show that even something like an animated trilogy can be a disappointment overall. Trolls Band Together, I think, is the perfect example of that. Because the trailers did have a lot of promise to them. I mean, there was a lot of good ideas. There was a fun concept overall. The animation looked pretty good. An NSYNC reunion. I mean, this should have been a ton of fun. But coming out of it, it just kind of let me down like the other Trolls movies did. I don't know what it is. It's just like, I get so excited with the possibility of what these movies could be. But in the end, they're just kind of the same movies in general. Story-wise, they're not that great overall. I guess in the positive aspects of it, the animation overall is very good. I mean, it's probably the cleanest looking of all the Trolls movies in general. But at the same time, it doesn't really do a whole lot to make the film worth it when it's all said and done. I mean, the series as a whole has good ideas, just not good execution when it's all said and done. And that was really one of those big letdowns that I thought that, okay, they're going back to the same DreamWorks that they were back in 2020 and 2021, and not the case, because their next movie, which was a Netflix original, which probably would have been better if it went to the big screen because it was friggin' awesome, was Orion in the Dark, a movie that came out in February. It was an amazing film where you have this kid named Orion who is basically being followed by this character known as the Dark, who, you know, he takes him on a trip to overcome his fears and show him the benefits and wonders of nighttime. And it's a really great film written by Charlie Kaufman. Features Jacob Tremblay as Orion and Paul Walter Hauser as the Dark. It's a really great film that I don't think a lot of people are going to realize that it exists, because most people don't look at Netflix and see that this film's on there. I mean, this is a film that would have benefited big time by being on the big screen, but sadly, it was not. But if you go on Netflix, definitely check this movie out. It's definitely worth it. And then we just had Kung Fu Panda 4, which was the lesser of the Kung Fu Panda movies in general, but I still thought it was alright. I think there's still enough there to make that movie worth watching. And it's a fun movie and all. Like, it's definitely a pointless sequel, but it's kind of like Toy Story 4. It doesn't need to exist, but it's there. And it was alright for what it was. I think it is a fun film overall. And it really, DreamWorks right now, they're kind of at a point now where I think their next couple of movies can easily judge whether or not they're going to have a renaissance in the same fashion that Disney did back in the days, because their next movie looks incredible, The Wild Robot, which I talked about this one many times on this channel and also on the Reviewing Network Live. I still watch that trailer so many times. It still gets me teary-eyed listening to that version of What a Wonderful World. And it's directed by Chris Sanders. I mean, Chris Sanders is a phenomenal director, and I can't wait to see what he brings to that. The trailer for that looks incredible. That's one of my most anticipated movies of the year, if not my most anticipated film of the year, after the summer's Deadpool and Wolverine. But then we got Dogman, which is another Dave Pilkey adaptation based off of Captain Underpants, the same guy that gave us Captain Underpants. So I'm curious to see how that's going to work out. I'm curious to see what The Bad Guys 2 is going to be like when that comes out next summer. Oh, and then there's Gabby's Dollhouse, but whatever. I mean, that really could go the way of Spirit Untamed, where they just made it because, hey, it makes money for us, but But I think these next couple of films are going to determine whether or not DreamWorks is going to have kind of a similar renaissance to what Disney had back in the day. And quite honestly, I'm really excited and looking forward to seeing where they go with it, man. So let me know your thoughts down below on some of DreamWorks' more recent films. Do you agree with me that you think they might be on their way to another renaissance? Check out the previous episode I did talking about how animation is not just for kids, as well as some of the other videos I've done. And I will see you guys next week. So thanks for watching.